Hello, and welcome to Adventures with ADHD, where we shine the spotlight on fabulous neurodivergent folk so that you can be inspired, you can get tips, and it's always lovely meeting new people. So today I have with me the lovely Julia Seymore. Hi, Julia.
Hello there, you all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Pleasure.
Great. So I'm going to dive straight in with some questions, Julia. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely great. Yep. Yeah.
Ah, So, I know you're Julia, but tell us a bit more about where you're from or where you're living and what you do for a living.
Well, I'm Julia. I live in Oxfordshire, but I'm originally from Birmingham, which you can probably tell from my accent. And I'm a solution focused hypnotherapist. So that means essentially that I use deep relaxation and positive language and affirmations to help people feel calmer, and more in control. So I do a lot of work with sleep. That's kind of the thing that I don't know if I'm known for anything, maybe. But yeah, just helping people feel more in control of their lives, really, and better about themselves.
Oh, wow, lovely. Well, I will certainly be speaking to you after this interview because sleep is something that I struggle with. So,
Okay, well there we go. Then it was fated.
yes, absolutely. And what got you into hypnotherapy?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. Essentially, I've always been interested in personal development, and I think that's an ADHD thing, actually. My whole life, even from, really, really young, I was always interested in reading lots of different personal development books and things like that. And I'd used hypnotherapy, sort of downloads, the whole Paul McKenna thing, and, over the years. And then I'm going to be really honest, I had an argument with my husband, then husband, and I was on the sofa and I had a dream, which is crazy. I had this dream. And when I woke up, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a hypnotherapist. And I just went online and found the course and signed up for it. So it's a really it was a really weird dream. I had like a tiger came out of the jungle, and I could, like, it was so vivid. It was the most vivid dream I've ever had. It was like I could smell it, and like I run my fingers through its fur, and it sort of looked at me. And then I woke up and I went, I'm going to be a hypnotherapist to nobody, and that's when I did it. So I mean, I was a teacher for a long time, and I still work as an advisor to a wellbeing in schools program. So it was a change, but it's still helping people in another form.
Yeah, yeah, that's
So
amazing. What a lovely dream to have and that vividness. And then there was your message.
it was, yeah. I'm almost self-edit when I tell people because it makes me sound crackers, but it was literally it was so real. I can't even tell you. I can even remember it now. I guess people into spirit animals and things like that. It was so vivid. And that's where I ended up doing this. And when I decided that, it was the most obvious thing in the world. It was just like, you know, why didn't I think of that? So that's what we did.
Oh, amazing. Well, I'm so glad I asked. That's
Yeah,
lovely. That's so lovely.
weren't expecting
Okay.
that.
No, lovely. And I'm all about the spirit and spirit animals and universe. So that's just like, oh,
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
So, what led you to your ADHD, whether diagnosed or identified? What led you there?
Well, I am diagnosed, and I essentially I had always thought I was. I just, like you do, and then I went through the menopause. And I got divorced and I moved house and I was doing building work, and there was all this sort of it was actually a lot of trauma, to be fair, when I look back on it. But when you're in it with ADHD, I don't think you always realise. Um, and that was the point where I just completely, my memory was actually decimated.
Mm.
by the combination of menopause and ADHD. And it was quite scary. And I lost a lot of my cognitive function really at that time. And it's hard to, it's like anything with ADHD. It's hard to work out what caused what. Do you know what I mean? But that was the point where I was like, oh, okay, I think this really is. When I don't think that link between menopause and ADHD was talked about even 3 or 4 years ago, but for me it was so profound that's the point where I thought, okay, that's what's going on. So
yeah, and I am hearing more and more about the links between how menopause can really like exacerbate the symptoms. I'm not there yet, but I'm sure I'm waiting. So
well,
yeah.
yeah, and I think it's like anything, isn't it? Forewarned is forearmed with these things. And I think people talk about the menopause a lot more, recently than they ever did. But for me, it had a really profound effect. And I'm kind of first through of a lot of most of my friends. I went through it relatively young, but, first through most of my friends. And I don't think even we as strong, interested women realise how profound the change is. And when you add ADHD into that, it really can be difficult. So I'd just say to anybody who's heading in that direction, just health, get your health in as robust a position as it can be, actually, to sort of ease the path into that, really. And HRT, obviously.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm apologising. I'm maybe coughing through this interview. As we were just saying, I've just done a musical theatre show, and now we've all got this bug. So do excuse me. Thank you. That's really, really valuable about getting on top of your health and everything in preparation. Yeah. So what's different now about ADHD?
I think that I am probably better at realizing that the things that I really struggle with are not because I am useless, and I think even me, who's generally very, very positive, and we try not to use sort of negative language in this house and all those sorts of things. So I've got my daughter here as well, but I just think just things like household stuff I really struggled with. I'm profoundly untidy, and I felt really awful about that for a long time. And I think I'm just starting to be like, okay, this is a specific learning need, and I think it's quite easy to sort of see that as part of your character, as like a major character flaw. And I was always very conflicted because I was like, but I can do all this stuff, but I can't like organize the washing, that has quite a profound impact on your self-esteem. And I think so I'm more open to help, and I'm better at admitting what's going on. Because I'm a profound, I don't know about you, I'm a profound masker. I really, and I'm just starting to, let people see that vulnerability, which I don't enjoy. I won't lie, but I think it is important. I mean, are you a masker? Are you good at telling people when you need help? What about you?
Well, just as you were saying that, it's really interesting because I've just been doing this show. So this is the first time I've been in a kind of learning environment for a long time, learning the words. And I have had to ask for help. Like it wasn't complicated dance routines, but there were a lot of songs, a lot of movements, a lot of exits on and off stage. And sometimes I just had to say to people, I have no idea what I'm doing. Feel free to tell me. And people were so lovely, like, don't walk off stage yet. Oh yes, and before I would have really given myself a hard time. Why can't you just do it like everyone else? But because there was so much to remember, I did accept help from other people, and actually, yes, scary, vulnerable, but also so lovely. Like, oh, these people really do help, and it's a very new experience. So I totally get how vulnerable it is, you know?
Mm. And it's interesting because, you know, there's loads of studies about help. And, you know, and when we want to, when we need help, I'm very much, no, I'm fine. I can do it. You know, I can do it myself. Absolutely fine. But actually, when we ask other people for help, studies show that they actually feel closer to us. So
Yeah.
I think as ADHDs, you're almost like, oh, I don't want to put on them. I don't want to, you know, but actually that builds the relationship. And I think those social difficulties stop us from doing that actually, and that fear of rejection, which is, you know, real. So
Yes.
so I try and remind myself that you know, actually it's part of socialization and you know, social relationships to help each other with things. That's how, you know, human beings move forward, isn't it? So, you know, yeah, but it's not easy.
No, and it's fascinating talking about it in this context because you know, yeah, the fear of rejection over the years, I think I just thought I'll do it all myself then. I'll do it all myself. And now unlearning that is wow, yeah,
Mm,
amazing.
mm,
But yeah,
yeah.
and I love the way you put it in the context of socialization,
Mm,
helping each other rather than us being the ones doing all the helping, you know, and
yeah.
burning out.
Yeah.
Accepting help. I think that's huge, isn't it?
And you know that positive so one of the key sort of key principles that I work with is about those positive relationships, because it's a fundamental keystone to good mental health is regular positive interaction with other people. And I know myself as a self-employed person as well, my world just became, especially with COVID, the world becomes smaller, you know, and you
Yeah.
don't have that positive interaction. When I'm working with clients, we really put in that kind of, when are you seeing people that like you and love you and you enjoy spending time with, not just people you have to spend time with, you know. So things like you doing your show and being around fun, vibrant people, that's all just so good for your sort of positive mental health, you know. So
Yeah, and I think it's just worth it's just mentioning how I really had to put boundaries in place as well
yeah.
because being autistic as well as ADHD, you know, I get a great buzz and then I'm peopled out and I need my rest. So the last few weeks I built in proper rest time so that I could um, meditate and really relax. And you know, the after show party, I just didn't have it in me to go. And years ago, I would have forced myself anyway. I
Yeah.
was starting to feel ill, and I just didn't have anything left. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to go home.
Yep.
And I felt okay about it. I wasn't like, oh, I'm missing out. I was missing out, but I didn't beat myself up over it. So boundaries as well when you're socializing is huge, isn't it?
Again, that's something else that I do a lot of work with clients on is those boundaries, because, you know, it's about realizing that boundaries are good for everybody, not just for you. You know, because when you feel safe and comfortable, you exude that to other people, and they know where they are with you too. So, you know, even if you feel a bit selfish, putting boundaries in place, actually they're good for everyone. You know, it makes everybody feel comfortable. And you're totally right. I mean, space, you know, is so important for ADHD. Is that kind of, well, I know I'm going to do that, so I'm going to give myself this time to rest before
Yeah.
and time to recover
Yeah.
after. How do you use that time then? I'm interested because I know what I do, but what do you do to sort of decompress when you've had too much socializing? What do you use? Do you?
Well, well, this week I knew was going to be because we had so many rehearsals and then the shows. So what I did is I didn't have any calls, any work calls. I had some coaching clients,
Mm,
and I literally like I say, I struggle with sleep. So I was doing yoga nidras,
I love
um,
yoga nidra.
are,
Yeah,
if people don't know what they are, they're kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
like deep relaxation, guided meditations, but you don't, it's hard to explain really, but they
Mhm.
help you get into a relaxed state, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of parity, I think, between yoga nidra and hypnotherapy actually, but they're brilliant, aren't they? And they're so relaxing. So lots of yoga nidra, lots of time away from the normal things you
Yeah.
would do. Yeah,
Yeah, just trying to sleep, meditating, emotional freedom technique tapping for
yeah.
energy, which really
Okay.
helped, and
Yeah.
a cold Wim Hof shower. Just
Do you know what? I swear by a cold shower in the mornings because it does something to my brain. Does it with you? It just makes my brain feel like it's working.
yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, and just not really seeing anyone, taking the dog for a walk as well, you know.
Mm.
But yeah, I had to, like, it was a real test of what I'm capable of energy
Yeah.
wise.
Yeah.
And I did get ill, but so did quite a few of us. But
Mm.
I what my whole thing was I wanted to enjoy every show and not feel like I was dead on my feet, you know.
Yeah.
And I had the energy. Oh, this my camera's annoying. I hope it hasn't affected the sound.
No, it's all
Oh,
right. I can hear you.
yeah, people can just close their eyes if they don't want to see my head jerking around all over the
Yeah.
place. But yeah, oh, brilliant. So, what are
Yeah.
your what are your strengths then? What's great about you?
Oh, wow. Uh, I'm a bit Sherlock, in that I can just suss things out very quickly, and if I go into like an organization or if I'm in a room, I can always work out, I mean, if I'm in a restaurant, I can always work out what all the relationships are, how everybody's feeling, what's going on. So I'm a bit of a nightmare to go anywhere with. And if there's anything, like if my daughter's been up to something she shouldn't have been at home, I know within about 2 minutes because I can like, it's like that Sherlock thing, and
Yeah,
see what's been moved. But I mean, I'm a big pattern matcher. I love, and so it's really useful in work because I can see, and you'll know this, you can see the patterns of people's lives. You have that overview that when you're in it, you've got the nitty gritty and the day to day, but you just have that overview of what's of where they want to go to and where they've been, and you just pick it up very, very quickly, supernaturally quickly sometimes. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's probably my number one. And being able to recognize songs like in the first note or maybe like even before, when the sound comes in.
yeah,
I've got like crazy hearing. So yeah, so those are my superpowers, if we call it. So I don't know how much I subscribe to this ADHD as a superpower. It's my kryptonite, but yeah, that would be, those are mine. Yeah.
yeah. And that is such a such a great one with the pattern recognition and putting all those things together just by itself, like without having to think. Yeah, amazing. And the song one, yeah, I'm really good at that as well, recognizing a song in almost instantly. It's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Like
name
some
like
of
two.
the Yeah, yeah, like some of the Beatles songs have got like a specific sort of sound because of the way they're recorded before like the
Yeah,
notes come in, like like there's like a yeah, I don't know. I've always thought I wish there was a job, because that would be a skill to use. But yeah, I don't know.
probably is. Um, okay. So have you got any stories to share, like that you can look back on and think, oh, that was ADHD at play there?
No, I haven't really. I was thinking, not specifically. No, I can't think of that. I think the only thing I've really noticed since like being diagnosed is that like the things I like are so ADHD. When you like particularly TV, because I'm a big like if I'm trying to regulate and I'm working really hard on regulation at the moment between having to interacting with people.
One moment, I'm going to pause the dog thing. So do you have any kind of stories that are related to ADHD that you look back on and think, oh, that's ADHD?
don't, not really. I mean, I think my interests are quite ADHD, like the TV shows that I like. I was on I found this thread, just disappeared down that rabbit hole about, shows that people like that are super, neurodivergent. Gilmore Girls, I mean,
Oh,
love, even though, there's a lot of body image stuff and a lot of outdated stuff there that's a bit, but Gilmore Girls, New Girl, that's classic, just yeah, the things that I like are quite,
yeah.
so I think that as well. And also, I mean, I think back obviously things like when I was at university and I'd like go and change my course every few weeks.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And nobody would say to me, "Do you think maybe,
Mm.
yeah, things like that, you just think, oh."
Yes. Yeah.
But I also think that we learn through doing. ADHD is learned through doing. And I wonder if I'd have known about my ADHD earlier on, yes, life would have probably been different in lots of positive ways. I think in terms of relationship choices, I think that's if you can get in early, that's a good thing to really be looking at. But I also had a lot of experiences and did a lot of learning that I wouldn't have had. So all those things are tough,
Yeah.
but it's brought me to where I am. So I try and be quite reflective
Yeah.
about that. And because I know the way we learn by doing, when I've done something stupid or I think, oh God, why didn't I just listen to X, Y, Z? I do try and go, well, I wouldn't have learned. And what's the learning? And I think it's quite useful for us as ADHDers to be reflective.
Oh, yeah. 100% agree. And yeah, if you can, there is grief, isn't there? And a whole cycle of grief that kind of carries on cycling around, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
But I think you're right. The key is, okay, what have I learned? What can I learn? How has this got me to where I am? Absolutely. Otherwise, people will just be miserable, and we don't want people to be miserable, do we? We want them to be happy and loving of themselves.
yeah. And I think ADHDs can just bring so much to other people's lives. I think we are, the creatives and the inspirers, hopefully, and I think part of it is about us stepping into that role, and raising ourselves, and stepping into who we can be. And that's quite different. And I feel like it's probably particularly difficult. It's really difficult, I think, for women. I mean, I don't know your age, but my age, I'm like, nearly 50 now. So women my age, I think that's really hard. But I also wonder about the younger generation who are growing up knowing all this information already. And so their ADHD is almost being shaped by social media and what they're hearing and all the things that ADHDers can't do.
This is a problem, I think, because we're like sponges, aren't we? So we absorb these messages. And if somebody says, oh, well, I can't, if they hear you can't do this because you've got ADHD, that's going to potentially become a belief, isn't it? Which, we if we want to do things, we find a way, and if you can't find a way, do you really want to do it? These are the sorts of questions that need to be asked. But yeah, that's why I do a lot of what I do to dispel a lot of those beliefs.
I think it's really because a lot of the work that I do is, that sort of it's neuroscience based. So people think hypnotherapy is like one and done. It isn't, because we want long-term brain change. So we need to repeat these positive affirmations, these positive behaviors. So we've got to remember that every time we're reading, oh, ADHDers are more prone to mental illness. ADHDers are untidy. I mean, I am, but you have to change that, because what's happening is their brains are changing. The brains are physically changing. We're reinforcing neural pathways that are not helpful. And so I think part of it is really got to be about that responsibility and being conscious of what you're being fed. And that's why I worry for young neurodivergents, because I think there's nobody to protect them from that, at the early stages. So, yeah.
Yeah, really, really interesting point. Okay, so what helps you with your ADHD challenges?
Well, that's a really good question. So we hate structure, right? But we really need it. So that's number one. I always say I'm big on preparing for success. So, and people call it, I don't know, they call it future friending or whatever we call it, preparing for success. So I try and go for those basic needs first. So I always go like sleep, food, shelter, and then you build from that, don't you? So, if I plan my meals, that makes a huge difference. I get my vitamins and, regime. I've got a vitamin regime. I try and get early sunlight. So like this morning, I was outside in the garden working at about because I wake up quite early, 5:30, just planning my week and stuff. So I try and get plenty of sunlight. And then if I'm on like the lower end of things and I've got a lot on, like you, I try and give myself that extra space either side of things. And spend a lot of time under a weighted blanket with, sometimes I have, the ear defenders and sunglasses. So I try and reduce all the stimulation, basically, so that I've got it to give elsewhere, if you see what I mean. So,
yeah. And it's so essential to get those basic needs met, because otherwise you can't function,
No, and like you mentioned sleep earlier on, but for me, the thing that I tell all my clients is basically 11, you have to try and be asleep by 11 p.m. because that's, you want 3 cycles of REM sleep overnight. And that's the point where everything that's happened during the day gets moved to a different part of the brain. So you don't feel it emotionally, you have more of a reflection of it. And you can tell it as a story rather than feeling it still. So that's why we feel better when we wake up the next morning and look back on something, because we've had time for our brain to process it. So for ADHDers, that's super important to have those 3 rounds of REM sleep, because our brains are processing so much that there's that I'm always trying. I always get into bed really early so that I can, benefit from that, really.
Yeah, and it's not easy always changing habits, but it is so important. And with the right support, habits can be changed. And that's the thing. Even if people have tried before and, not failed, but not failed because they've tried, this is what can really help. Yeah, thank you. So finally then, what advice or tip would you give to somebody that's just been diagnosed with ADHD and is maybe feeling a bit lost?
I would say that when you're diagnosed with ADHD, I think you wait so long for diagnosis that you don't expect to feel worse, once you've got the diagnosis. So I wouldn't say people, you should definitely be ready to feel worse. But I would say the most important thing is that you dig in and cover your basics, because there'll be a lot of information. There'll be a lot of people who are ready to tell you things. There'll be a lot of people ready to take your money, organisations, things like that. So I think it's really important to get an idea of the kind of life that you want to live and start thinking about how you want life to be in an ideal world, and then start moving towards that in really, really small steps, really small. Because I think that our brain, we know what's good for us, really. We know what we want, but we have to get quiet enough to hear it. And that wisdom is there. So I think if I'd say anything, I'd say do everything you can to reduce anxiety and take care of yourself first and foremost. then you can start putting things in small step at a time. We don't like small steps. I always want to do everything, but small steps work, you know.
Yeah, and you can feel yourself getting somewhere with the small steps rather than, oh, I haven't done it all, that's it, you know.
Yeah,
all the time.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, that's how motivation works. Like, you know, we do a tiny thing, we get the boost of, you know, all the dopamine and all, you know, all the good chemicals, and then we can do the next thing. So we rarely just do that small thing if we make it small enough, you know. So that's what I would use if I was starting again.
Yeah.
And stay off social media.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you, Julia. So many good tips, so much inspiring advice, and thank you for telling your story as well. It's been lovely having you on, and I know that people are going to benefit from this interview. So thank you so much.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much, Susie. I really appreciate it. You take care, okay?
Thank you.